Hello guys, welcome back to my channel. Today we're going to be doing our January wrap-up, and okay, hopefully I'm in focus. I don't know, I hope so. But I wanted to just share my thoughts on them, and yeah, so without further ado, let's just get started into this video. And okay, so starting with the first book I had read in the beginning of January, I wanted to also talk about, because I kind of read two at the same time. I decided to start Caraval and Love Holly. I did talk about these in reading vlogs, but Love Holly was such a great book. I absolutely loved it and adored it. So this is Love Holly by Emily Stone, and it's about a girl who goes through a really devastating traumatic accident, and it involves just certain relationships in her life being broken apart and her attempting to just go through that emotional damage that had caused and trying to rekindle or to reconnect with that, but also going through real life like crap to where it's not as easy to remend some of those things, especially when the other person isn't as easily accessible when it comes to those emotions as much as that main character is. I cannot find the right way to sit for this video, but it was such an emotional book. It wasn't to where I started crying, but it was to where it really felt like a really deep pull on your heartstrings, and both characters go through something semi-similar to where they can connect somehow, but also where their situation contrasts with each other. And I just feel like the way that the author wrote this whole story, they just upkept with a lot of things to where it just had a continuous flow of interest. And I would also recommend listening to the audiobook because I loved the audiobook. I feel like it was just a perfect representation of each of the characters. I feel like the whole setting that she put into the story was also really great. I feel like she really put in like a lot of thought about how these characters actually felt. Like, it didn't feel so cookie cutter and it didn't feel so bland. It actually felt like you felt connected to the characters, and she does a lot of build up to where you actually feel connected to the whole storyline, the whole plot of it. So I never caught myself ever getting disinterested. I did feel like there was times where I was like, okay, so what's gonna happen? And then something kind of big happened like each time. So I feel like that was just like a really good way to keep me hooked into the story. And this was a Christmas gift, which I'm so happy I read it. It was such a good book. I think overall it is a 5-star, and this is a book that I wouldn't mind rereading again during the holidays. And I know I did read this in January, but I wanted to kick off January with like one last holiday book. But this actually didn't just take place in like festive holiday times. Like, it wasn't just like a holiday. I actually thought it was gonna be more like a lighthearted, bubbly book, but I wouldn't say it's like one of those like certain movies, like you watch those romance movies where it has like little comedy snippets in it, but it's also, they have like a lot of deep stuff in it as well, where it's like, that's a good movie. To me, I like movies like that where they're serious but there's also little moments of like bubbliness within it, and it's exactly what I feel like that book was. So I had such a fun time with it. I love the audiobook so much. I'm so glad I decided to. I actually used an Audible credit for it, so I feel like I wouldn't mind reading that and listening to that again either. But even reading it was really great. And it also does like time jumps, so it's like sometimes you'll do like flashbacks, which I actually really like the flashbacks because I think it helps me connect more with the character and her situation and the other sides of the characters, and just the way that everything connects and the way that she does like little parts within the story and then she connected it somehow later on to the story to where it didn't feel irrelevant. It was just so good. Like, I absolutely recommend this book to anybody, and it was like a 5 out of 5-star read. Loved it. The other book I picked up in January is Caraval by Stephanie Garber, and I have been wanting to read this whole series for the longest freaking time. I actually received the rest of the series, the other last 2 books, as Christmas gifts, which I'm so grateful for and so touched. And I'm so happy because I'm actually so happy because it pushed me into starting the series, and I have no regrets. I do want to say that I don't think everything is like perfection, not because of the story. I love the storyline, I love the plot, I love the characters. I just feel like I love Stephanie Garber's writing a lot, like so much. But I think the story took a turn into a certain way that I wasn't expecting for some reason. I don't know why, but I just imagined this whole thing having to do with certain, I don't want to like spoil it for anybody, but I just think I'm gonna break down each book. So the Caraval, out of all the 3 of them, this is probably my most favorite one. I think I would rate this like a 4.5 if not 5-star read. I think the only reason I maybe docked off a star was because sometimes I did catch myself getting a little bit lost, and I don't know, it's not the story, but it was more like the way she kind of flowed everything together. I just feel like sometimes it kind of, I got caught myself getting a little bit confused, but it wasn't to where I wasn't interested. I absolutely loved like the intro into the Caraval world. I loved the intro to the characters. There was like so much things I just wanted to know about, like the mystery of it. I wanted to know like the romance of it. The romance within the story is so freaking cute, and it just kept me so hooked the whole entire time. And I love like the fantasy build of it. I love the characters and story, and I love the intro to the Caraval world. It made me just so excited and actually made me feel so like inspired and obsessed with this world, and I think that's what just hooked me in like right away. So I think out of all of this is definitely one of my favorite ones because it really got me into the whole series. But I do think like sometimes I did catch myself getting a little lost, which I don't think was that terrible, so I don't want to dock off a lot of stars. And I think it's just because her writing style is a little bit it's really lyrical, and I love that. It's like poetic and lyrical, and I love it so much. But sometimes it was the point to where I was like a little bit confused what was going on. But I don't think it necessarily ruins the story. It doesn't ruin anything for me. So I would rate this like a 4.5, if not 5-star reads, and I definitely recommend. Now, the second one I read was Legendary by Stephanie Garber. I feel like it took me a minute to get into this book, but I think I actually ended up really liking this one a lot more than this last one. The only reason is because I actually didn't like Tella's character at first. I found her kind of irritating sometimes and a little bit childish. And when you start reading more, this one I feel like was mainly about her. So I feel like I started to get a little bit more of a connection to her and her motives, and also her backstory. And the romance within this book was really freaking cute, to where I felt like I was more interested in her story a little bit more than compared to Scarlett's. And I ended up really liking this book a lot. I feel like you end up seeing a lot more of Legend. You end up getting introduced to some really cool characters such as Jax, and you get to see more of like the Fates, which I think this is the part where I found it to be a little off. I didn't know that this whole series was about Fates. For some reason I just thought it was about like a mad world, like a mad carnival world. But I feel like the only reason I kind of docked off a star was because I thought it was gonna follow more of like Legend's world. And then I just feel like it became more about Tella's motives and what she what she needed to do, like her ambitions and everything, which was amazing. And I actually got more connected to her character because of it. So that's why I really do like it. So it kind of outweighs it. But I think I just didn't expect that. For some reason I just thought we were gonna get more of like Legend's world, because I loved Caraval because I fell in love with the Caraval world. And so I thought we were gonna get more of that world, which I feel like we didn't in this one. And sometimes I did catch myself getting really confused in this book because it didn't flow as much as compared to the first one. And I think for some reason I just thought we were going to see also Scarlett's point of view a lot, but she completely disappeared off of this book. And I think she was doing this on purpose. I think Stephanie Garber wanted to do it on purpose, to kind of have a whole book dedicated to each character, where you have like a build-up for each of them, which I do actually appreciate, because it helped me gain a connection to each character and understand them a little bit better. Because like I said, the first one I wasn't crazy about Tella, and then the second one I ended up knowing more about her, and I just wanted to find out more about her backstory and even like the romance that was blossoming within this book. And I love the characters that were introduced in this one, so I really do like this one a lot. And I think I rated it like a 4-star read, so I'd probably keep it at a 4-star read. The only reason it's not like a 4.5 or a 5 is because I did catch myself getting lost a lot. I feel like she kind of made you jump around a lot, but I don't know, it could have just been me, but I did kind of get lost and confused sometimes because of the whole like where the setting was taking place at. Like I was just a little bit, I didn't feel like the world building was as important in this one, but other than that I still loved it because I love the characters. I was just happy to be back in the Caraval world. So this one's like a 4-star read for sure. Lastly was Finale, and this is the final book of the Caraval series, or the Caraval trilogy. And I had mixed emotions. So sometimes I loved it, and then sometimes I didn't hate it, but sometimes I was like, what the heck is this? Like I was just so confused. There's all these different introductions to this whole different thing that I just did not expect, because I was really excited to, sorry my dog is sneezing. I was just really excited because I thought we were gonna get more, like I said, of the Caraval world, and we actually didn't get it as much. We got more about like the Fates and about their mother and their backstory, which I loved because it was actually really cool. Like I love the little flashback scenes and the time jump scene, but which I'm not going to go in depth because I don't want to ruin it for anybody. And I also do love the romance that kind of blossomed in these stories. Like I liked it how it involved all the characters. It wasn't just a book dedicated to one each character. I think the only reason I would dock off maybe like a star, so I'd probably rate like a 3.5 to 4-star read, was because a lot of majority of times of the book, I was just confused on where the heck we were. Like, I was just really confused on like where the whole storyline took like a detour on, or like a new path, because I thought we were going to be into like Legends world. I was just waiting, and I think maybe that's why I felt like a little bit disappointed, because I was just so excited to see more of Legends world and like the Caraval world and like his mad mind. And I do kind of wish we got more a backstory on that, which I think she created another book, so I'm hoping that it's going to show us more about that. But I think that's the only thing I found disappointing. But in general, I loved how she wrapped up the ending. I fell in love with the whole romance that happened within the story. I fell in love with the characters. I feel like she just put it all together in such an amazing way to where I absolutely loved it, even though I was lost like maybe a good majority of the time. But I think the only reason is because sometimes I caught myself getting a little confused on the whole fates and how it was intertwined with like their past, I think. But maybe that just could have been me, because maybe I wasn't paying attention to like those little details and the parts of how they're supposed to connect somehow. So I think, well, I know for a fact I want to read this whole series. Like I for sure want to read this entire series again, because first off, I absolutely fell in love with it, even if I was like really lost in like the third book. But I really do want to reread this whole series again. I honestly, it might not sound like it because I'm like talking about how confused I was sometimes, but to be honest, this was like one of my most favorite series. I absolutely adored this world, and it created like a giant inspiration for me, because I became obsessed with everything. Like I'm so obsessed with the characters, like so much, like where I actually feel like there's like a question in one of the book tags where they said, oh, what book has like some of your favorite characters? And honestly, it's the Caraval series. I love the characters in these books, and I think that's why I would for sure go back, especially because I would love the Caraval world. I love how mad and crazy it was, and how mysterious and like romantic it was. I loved it. I just loved it so much. I love like Jack's and Legend's character, and I actually loved Tella's character a lot. And I loved how Tella and Scarlett's character like connected at the end. I just loved how everything connected, you know. I love how like all the characters, how she combined like the ending with the whole series together. Honestly, this whole series reminds me of Frozen a little bit, like with the two sisters. It just gave me that whole, I don't know why, but I absolutely loved this entire world, and I'm so grateful that I read it, because it became like one of my most favorite series, and I for sure want to read them. Even though I don't rate every single book like a 5-star read, I still had like a fantastic time reading them. And even if sometimes I get lost in books, if the ending and the characters and the whole setting of it and the plot of it is really fascinating and interesting to me, to where I keep wanting to read it, and the ending is just like a, oh my gosh, I love this, that to me is like a really good book, to like where it's like one of my favorites. Because I feel like some of my favorite books aren't 5-star reads all the time. Sometimes like I only knock it off because maybe like the writing of it was confusing, or how they put like the time jumps might have been confusing. But if everything else is still like where it kept me so fascinated, and to where I knew that this series was one of my favorites, because when I wasn't reading this book, I would find this series in everything else in like real life. So like when I was listening to music, I would try to find music that kind of matched this whole series, because I just couldn't stop thinking about this world. I couldn't stop thinking about this whole series, and I couldn't stop thinking about the characters. Like I loved the characters so much. I just loved, it reminded me of like those old animes I used to watch when I was like younger, with like the prince and the fates, and the two sisters having like two different type of emotions. And I think sometimes I did catch myself getting confused, but then like it was kind of cool seeing how they kind of correlated with each other, and how their emotions kind of correlated with each other, and they were so different yet so alike. And I just loved it. I loved it so much. So I would definitely rate the overall series like a 4.5, if not 5 stars. But I think the only reason is because I just feel like her flow was a little bit off sometimes, to where I was just a little bit confused on like where exactly we're at, like setting wise, because I feel like each book focused on something a little bit too different, to where she mainly focused on that and not on the other parts. And that's why I feel like Caraval was one of my favorites, because I feel like she focused on the characters, she focused on the world. I think the only thing is you don't get Tella that much in the first one, and that's why you kind of like start to like not really like her, but then you really like her in the second one. I mean, at least for me. But I am so happy I picked these up, and overall I'm just so happy with all the books that I did end up finishing for January. And I just feel like it was a pretty good reading month, because I've been wanting to read this forever, for the longest time, and now that I know that I love Stephanie Garber's books, I'm excited to pick up her other books. And I am so happy I finished this Love Holly book as well, because it was such a good last book to read for January before Christmas was over. So that is it for my reading thoughts. I hope I didn't trail off too much. I feel like I kind of just went really heavy into the Caraval world. I might I am so low in this camera, like my head is cut off. That's really awkward. I might actually do like a spoiler review on the Caraval series because I absolutely loved it, but there's things that I just want to talk about and I feel like I can't really talk about it without spoiling it. So I might dedicate a video to that. So if you guys are interested in that, just let me know because I do want to talk about some things in this whole series. But this series became a part of my personality. Like, I love it so much and I am for sure going to reread it because I want to pick up on the parts that I missed, because maybe it wasn't the book, maybe it was me, maybe I just read some parts. But overall, I'm just so happy I got to share these books with you guys and my thoughts, and I really hope you guys enjoyed this reading wrap up. I can't wait to see what we end up finishing in February, and let me know what you guys finished in your January wrap up as well, and I will see you guys on the next video. Bye.